I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
80-something years ago, so it's kind of dated in the version that we have.
weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time. She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not...
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
In the new Snow White remake, young Snow White lives a happy princess life until tragedy claims a life of her mom, after which her horny dad immediately falls for a hot stepmom with magic powers. Stepmom, what are you doing? Well, she kills the dad for the crown and rules the kingdom with an iron fist and turns Snow White into a maid.
And who's that? Oh, it's Sam!
Then, years later, when the hot stepmom hears a magic mirror saying that Snow White is now hotter than her, she very reasonably orders one of her men to take her out and take her out.
Take him out.
Take him out. Like for drinks?
No. Take him out.
But instead, Snow White runs into the scary woods and goes to sleep in a random cabin, and then some CGI dwarves show up. And then there's also bandits and more dwarves that are not CGI, and then the not-so-hot stepmom poisons Snow White, and then one bandit kisses her and she wakes up, and then she must save the kingdom from the evil stepmom. So yeah, the movie is pretty bad. Bad enough to flop so much that Disney had to halt other remakes. Bad enough to get a worse rating than Dragon Ball Evolution and finally set its soul free after 16 long years.
Impossible.
And what's crazy is that that's not even the most impressive part about this movie's badness. See, the Snow White remake is so horrendous that at a time when people are more divided than ever, it inexplicably brought everyone together. All people, no matter their political affiliation, no matter which actress or Middle Eastern region they support, no matter if they're woke or anti-woke or pro-Disney or anti-Disney, no matter who it was, they had reason to hate this movie and wish for its failure. In other words, the Snow White remake is the greatest uniter of peoples since Jesus. And just like Jesus, it gave its life for it. And as for the reasons why the movie's bad, you've already heard plenty. The actors do a terrible job, the story is a lazy remake, and everything overall is dumb as hell. Old news.
Yeah, I know.
But instead of just repeating what's already been posted on Twitter and Reddit, I would like to dive deeper, because I'd argue that there's more beyond those negatives, beyond memes about which actor looks better, stuff to actually learn. The actors aren't the problem so much as it is the characters they're playing. The remade story isn't a problem so much as it is the lack of modernization. The movie being dumb isn't a problem so much as, well, actually, yeah, the movie is just pretty dumb. And we'll dive deeper into that. Here's how Snow White became terrible enough to unite the whole world against it, and how to avoid the same fate. And by the way, if you dislike the movie, please leave a like. I'm trying to see something. On the character side, the main issue is not only the actors, but more so that their characters have no sense of realism to relate to or understand or care about.
She is more fair than thee.
Even though both lead actors have gotten their fair share of criticism for obvious reasons, their input is inconsequential. This isn't an immersive movie with real people, but instead a fake play where actors behave and say lines according to their roles. And for the fake play role that Gal Gadot, for example, is supposed to be, she fits reasonably well. She's tall, slender, heavily dependent on looks, with an accent that's cold and mechanic. She is fit for an intimidating, evil queen. She cannot act at all, sure.
What did you say?
But in this case, it doesn't really matter. Her role could have been played by a chameleon like Cate Blanchett, and it would hardly make a difference.
Whatever game you're playing, it won't work. You can't defeat me.
And that's because the characters in this movie lack a source of realism for their words and behavior, which is motivation. Looking at the Queen, for instance, everything about her comes down to this magic mirror keeping track of the fairest lady, which she's obsessed to be. But why? Why is she obsessed to be the fairest? Are her magic powers dependent on that? Is her stature as the queen dependent on that? Has she been bullied about her looks before and so now she's insecure about the topic? Does she believe that she has value only so long as people think of her as the prettiest? I don't know. And because I don't understand that motivation for what she says or does,
It was Snow White who set the bandit free. She's plotting again.
everything she says and does is just clunky and weird.
More fair than thee.
If Snow White is now the hottest, then why is there no apparent change in the queen's powers or presence or stature as the ruler? If the queen is obsessed with being the hottest, then why is she overserving herself as if she's running a mukbang channel? If the queen needs to kill Snow White, then why doesn't she just do it? Why is she coming up with all these over-elaborate Scooby-Doo plans of turning into a grandma and using a poison apple that she knows has a cure? Why not just like stab Snow White? Does she need to keep Snow White's murder a secret? Does she need to make it seem like natural causes?
I don't know.
I'm going too far into nitpicking, but the point is that without motivation, there's not much you can do. It doesn't matter how poorly or well the Queen's actor delivers a fierce line about killing Snow White, if it's not understood why it's so important for her to kill Snow White. That's why the biggest job of a director is always to explain to the actor their character's motivation in the scene. Without that, you're in trouble.
I said enough!
You serious?
And it's the same with Snow White. There's nothing there. She's dancing in the beginning, and then she's made into a maid, and then she helps a robber, and then she's suddenly the fairest lady, and then she runs into the woods that are scary for some reason, and yada yada yada. She's not a person going after something specific so much as she's a pinball bouncing around. Even her songs are vague wishes about something, somewhere, somehow, someday.
How I wish I could go where the good things grow. Can I somehow, some way learn to be my father's daughter?
It doesn't matter how talented or untalented the actress is because there's nothing specific for her to pull from. The problem isn't whether she's more or less pretty than Gal Gadot, but rather that the reason she's crowned more pretty is unclear. She helps one person and then suddenly she's the fairest, as if she's now the only person in the world whose personality is better than the Queen's.
No!
And again, it's motivation that can fix everything. For instance, you could establish that Snow White's biggest dream has always been to go to explore the world and people outside the city, maybe even the place where her dad went missing, which she's scared to do because she's always been kept in the city. That could be the source of all she does and says. It could be why she takes interest in the outsider and wants to help him. Why she becomes the fairest when the mirror realizes that she's growing to be the person she truly is. Why the forest is so scary. Because as we would know from her motivation, the world is unknown to her and thus scary. This is her imagination. But if we don't know what motivates Snow White to be scared of the forest and blunder around like this, it's just laughable to see the actor do so. Overall, motivation is key to characters, the source where actors can pull from for what they say and do. Nemo's dad may not be real, but his motivation to protect his only child at any cost makes him feel real. Rapunzel may not be real, but her motivation to live life and see her birthday lights makes her feel real. Without motivation, nothing that's said or done means anything, and no real or unreal actor can hide that. On the story side, the main issue is not that it's a remake, but more so that the elements in this remake are not modernized to function in a live-action feature of today. A great example is the mirror deciding the fairest lady, which is a concept that's arguably more relevant now than ever. Thanks to stuff like Instagram and TikTok and others, a lot of people's worth online is calculated with metrics based highly on their looks. And that could have been something to explore here. Like, oh, maybe the mirror, or at least its results, can be seen by all, and the Queen is always on it, and so she feels good because people kinda admire her for it. Or at least that's what she believes. But then one day, the mirror selects this other girl to topple her as the fairest, which plunges her into crisis mode.
She's so close to passing me and everybody's reminding
Now, the queen fears that people will forget her and that she's losing her worth in everyone's eyes, and so she's grasping to get back on top at any cost, maybe before anyone else realizes the new result. Because the movie already alludes to publicity like that anyway.
All hail the queen! Fairest of them all!
And then, the whole story could be about exploring that topic, exploring the pitfalls of this kind of comparative thinking, and that you should accept yourself as you are, and that your worth is not dependent on how much your beauty and personality gets celebrated on the internet, or in this case, on a magic mirror on a wall. A very timely way to explore this old concept. But the movie doesn't do that, it just recycles the same stuff from a century ago. Oh, the mirror is the queen's private property that for some reason says that she's the fairest. Until one day it suddenly says that now Snow White is the fairest. We have no idea why that matters because nobody else sees it, and it's not even clear how the mirror works. At first, you think that it ranks based on beauty until it becomes evident that it's Snow White's personality that lifts her above the queen. But even then, it's just confusing because if the mirror is based on personality, then how the hell could this evil killer be the fairest to begin with? The way the movie handles this whole concept is not only idiotic, but also frustrating because so much could have been done with it in the modern era. And of course, nothing is done. The point is that elements that may have worked and been accepted as good enough in the 1930s are not necessarily so in the 2020s. Simply showing a train on screen does not make an impression on the audience anymore. For instance, since a shallow tale of good versus evil is not enough nowadays, the movie tries to do something with the relationship between Snow White and the Queen. There's a thematic point about being tough because that's what it takes to survive.
One is weak, useless, fragile. The other, hard, unyielding, everlasting.
Again, the concept itself is good. The Queen believes that people need a leader as tough as diamonds to keep them safe, whereas Snow White represents a soft flower that more so makes people feel good. It's an interesting topic to explore. But the issue again is that the movie doesn't even try to do so within modern standards. Like, oh, the Queen says that people need protection.
A flower cannot keep you safe.
But it's unclear from what. We don't really explore this world or its regions or what rivaling cities or dangers there might be in it. It's just said that, yeah, there's some bandits out there, maybe, even though they never do anything, and it's not even clear if the townspeople are different from them. Comparing the details of this fantasy world to others of our time, it's just ridiculous. But whatever, it's a remake of an old story, so it doesn't matter. Now look, here comes the prince to give Snow White a kiss that brings her back to life somehow. Yippee! Altogether, the movie puts in zero effort to lift old elements to meet the standards of today. The actors do go around saying in interviews that they're modernizing an old princess story, sure.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
But they're not really doing so. They're just saying stuff to score social credit points. The movie implies itself to be good due to progressive topics, but without putting any real work into the characters or elements or anything. Like, there's nobody in the world today over the age of 2 who thinks that this new Snow White is somehow a three-dimensional or strong female hero.
Take this poison apple.
Oh, okay.
But of course, that doesn't stop the actors from claiming so.
Weird. So we didn't do that this time. She's not gonna be safe with the prince, and she's not.
Bottom line is that when you're remaking old ideas, you need to evolve them to meet modern standards. Being a remake is not an excuse to leave stuff halfway, which is what this movie does. Finally, this movie is dumb, not because the things in it themselves just are dumb, but more so because those things lack proper foundation. And the best way to explain this is to fly through the main events and ideas to see how they're built on nothing. In the beginning, there's a lot of repetition that Snow White's parents want her to grow into a fair and kind princess.
Showed her how to rule with love. Someone fair.
Someone someone fair.
Watched with pride as Snow White grew into a kind and fair young prince.
Okay, but what's the reason for this? Why is this a point of contention worth repeating? Why would the parents think that Snow White wouldn't be a kind princess? Does the kingdom have a history of cruel rulers or something? What basis is there to question her kindness to begin with or care about the outcome? Not sure, and I don't care. When the queen sends the huntsman to take Snow White out of the forest to take her out, he suddenly cannot do that.
I just can't do it. I can't take this no more, man.
Okay, but for what reason? There's no personal connection established between them. And if it is just because Snow White is so cute and innocent, which is totally understandable, then why do the other soldiers have no problem with the mission of murdering her? Why is this guy different? Hell, why do the other soldiers follow the queen's orders to begin with if the townspeople they're oppressing are their own families? Oh, and what is this stuff about people being oppressed? It's implied that the queen taxes the hell out of everyone, but that's about it. We don't really get into if the people are hungry or suffering or anything. So what are they marching against at the end exactly? Not sure, and I don't care. When Snow White goes into the cabin, we suddenly cut to the dwarves going to work in the mine. And if the cut already wasn't pretty strange and out of nowhere, the mining is also confusing as hell. Like, what's happening? What are the dwarves mining and for what purpose? Not sure. They're just mining and it's fun and I don't care. I mean, a great example of what I'm getting at is when the dwarves arrive home to find someone in their bed. Now, there's this intimidating moment where they slowly prepare to uncover who or what that is, and it's absolutely pointless because the audience already knows. Either we shouldn't be sure it's Snow White so that we can feel tension for the dwarf, or if we do know it's Snow White, then the dwarf should prepare to attack with something so that we can feel tension for her. But if he's intimidated by something that we already know isn't intimidating, there's nothing there. The scene is worthless. That's this movie's main problem. It does a whole lot of things, but without making those things mean or be worth anything. Oh, there's talk about Snow White's dad being alive, maybe somehow.
What if he's still alive? I have to find him.
And then there's more talk that he's actually dead somehow.
Easy for me to have him killed.
Well, what was the point of this if you're not gonna do anything beyond words? Oh, there's dwarves who are CGI, and then there's another dwarf who isn't CGI. Well, what's the meaning there? Are dwarves in this world a race of people like in Lord of the Rings, or are they just normal people who... like, what's going on here? Oh, the way Snow White ultimately turns the soldiers against the queen is by remembering their names, even though we never saw her learn their names. It's not the events or the ideas themselves that are the problem. The problem is that they lack foundation to feel real, so to speak. And for context, imagine there was foundation. If in the beginning Snow White went around town kindly getting to know all her citizens and their names in the form of a song, it would explain and give power to the later events. To why she remembers people's names at the end. To why the huntsman has pre-existing feelings for her. To why she is a fair ruler due to not thinking herself above her citizens. The same things would mean a lot more. Altogether, what I'm saying is that the movie itself is not dumb. What's dumb is the way it leaves whatever it does hollow. Some things in movies can be taken for granted, like that this is a musical with singing and a fantasy with magical animals. Yes, but for most things you do, you need to build foundation. You can't just pluck ideas and throw them in as is. Which is exactly what the Snow White remake does. It's a movie full of stuff without a basis, worth nothing. And nothing is the one thing that all audiences can join together to dislike.